Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching The Breakfast on PlusTV Africa. It's time to look at the stories that has popped on the daily newspapers that we had this morning. And the first paper we'll be discussing is the Nigerian Tribune. But we're joined with KEHINDE NWANDU, is the Executive Director of CKN News. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We'll look at the papers, at least see the headlines that Wike allowed, more or less.
That's right, because on all the papers that we had this morning, the president is commissioning the road linking Idu with Zuba Road today, and everywhere is flooded with that. But let's look at, one story here on the Nigerian Tribune. It says, alleged 7.2 billion naira fraud. EFCC arrests ex-NNPC's chief financial officer, ex-Warri Refinery MD. One thing that has been said over and over again is the fact that the NNPCL is not very transparent, and then we've seen corruption rear its ugly head up there. And when we're hearing $7.2 billion fraud, that's a whole lot of money. But what is your own comment on this? And, are we going to see any investigation, anything that's going to come out of here, or the EFCC is probably going to let sleeping dogs lie at some point?
Well, I have been in the forefront of asking the EFCC to start looking at the books of the NNPC. I've been saying this for years. And I've said it time and time over that while we continue to say that the Nigeria police is the most corrupt agency in Nigeria, I tend to disagree. Those are boys with little coins. The main corruption is within the NNPC and other agencies of government, MDAs, that we pump in billions and billions of naira, including dollars, on a yearly basis, and they have nothing to show with it or show for it. A good example is all the money that has been spent for the turnaround maintenance, all the various refineries across Nigeria, probably in the past 10 years or 15 years, and we have nothing to show for it. Even the so-called one that they said was republished, the one of Port Harcourt one, because there are two there, and also Warri, you see what has happened. Practically nothing comes out of it. So I have been, in fact, I took this up personally, face to face, with the EFCC chief. Yes, a few weeks ago, when he had an interactive section, his EFCC chairman, when he had an interactive section with selected senior executives, media executives, and I asked, why is it that NNPC, you people don't look into NNPC? All you don't do is just go and arrest Yahoo boys, break into people. So where are the main culprits in terms of corruption that you people just keep your eyes away from them? And he said something is being done. So probably this is one of them. When you are talking about $7.2 billion, my sister, we are not talking about naira here.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is huge. But I don't know whether it's going to be another media hype, as it has always been, and just make so much noise about it. After weeks, it's fading away, and that is the end. Because you need to ask yourself, what happened to the investigation of the EFCC on the issues surrounding Peter Edu, the former minister
of the humanitarian affairs,
humanitarian affairs, that was so much balloon about it, and a lot of corruption. She had to leave the cabinet. Till today, I have seen the report of that commission and of the investigation conducted by EFCC and other relevant agencies. So I hope this will not just go the same way like so many others before it, and we just continue to blink in darkness. But it's a good direction. After the CEO, we need to. They also need to question the various GMDs of NNPC, and the various top. These guys are stinkingly rich, and when I say stinkingly rich, I'm not talking in terms of naira, but in dollars. And this is our commonwealth that we are supposed to be used to improve the lives of Nigeria, and nothing is coming out of it. So let's watch and see. And it also behoves on us, the media. It behoves on us, the media, to always keep our eyes on this. Because what we do, we go with the flow. After 2 days now, you see that we just shift our attention to other matters, to getting ourselves distracted, and not sticking to the ball, and not taking our eyes off the ball. So this issue must not be allowed to be swept under the carpet for whatever reason. That's my personal opinion on this.
Yeah, well, the media has been talking, for instance, about Yahaya Bello.
Yes.
Now, the Natasha Apoti case, the headlines always read that the federal government is prosecuting Natasha Apoti on behalf of Akpabio and Yahaya Bello. So they can do what they like, even when we see whatever we see.
Let me shock you. Do you know that this is, we're talking about, now we're talking about Yahaya Bello and also the media. The AUJ celebrated, Nigerian celebrated the 70th anniversary last weekend in Abuja, here. And Yahaya Bello was given a lifetime achievement award. You know, shock you?
It shocked
So,
me. Even now, it shocked me. Ah, this is terrible. Anyway, Akeredolu's wife, Ondo government parlors trade words over demolition of a War Church massacre monument. The writers are, it's a request by the palace as a Olowo in council. No communication on the development, that's the church. We are respecting tradition, Ondo government. I think it's very worrisome. Those people that lost their lives and a monument was built in their honor, the next governor has come for whatever reason and demolished that monument, not even saying that they are going to replace it or something. And now they're talking about the fact that it's the palace that said they should bring down the monument. We've seen this happen before in Imo State, for instance, where the governor was building or was erecting statues and everybody was not really happy about it, but he left government after spending that much money, even though some of these statues, I don't know whether others were, but some of them were not standing in the way. They were not standing in the way of development and all that. The next governor, just to show there's a new sheriff in town, came and destroyed all of these things that could in the next 100 years have served as real tourist sites and all that. So I don't know why this keeps happening, and I don't know how you feel about the demolition of this monument built in honor of people who lost their lives. That was the first time we saw that kind of catastrophe, let's say so, in Ondo State. I don't know what you feel about the destruction of that monument.
Let me start with the second question. You talk about Imo, I'm from Imo State. And we, the people of Imo, totally are behind the demolition of those nonsense erected by Rochas. I continue to say complete nonsense. Those things were politically motivated. There is no reason for what he was doing. It was just loading, and in fact, some of the monuments, if you see some of them, it look like mush. It doesn't even look, it's not even a true representation of people. I don't know what.
But did the state gain by demolishing them?
Forget that. I say we, the people of Imo, are totally against it, and it was politically motivated. I'm a media person. I'm a PR person. When there's need for status, then you see there must be a history behind it. What is the history behind written a status of Muhammad Buhari in Imo State? What is the reason? What is the reason behind it? And there were so many others who were doing. Go to Ikeja, go to Odota, you will see the status of, if you are coming from the express, heading towards Mainland Beach, on the right, you will see the status of MQ Abiola. I'm sure you have looked at that. It symbolizes something. Go to Odota Park, you will see the status of Ganiba Rimi.
Yeah. Well
documented. Go to Allen Tony roundabout. If you are very familiar with the Tony roundabout in Ikeja, leading to Opedi, you will see the status of Bella. That's when he raised his hand. I'm sure you have seen. Those are monuments. Those are monuments. Not those caricature things that he was just. It was so joke in my place then. The next thing what we used to say in Imo State, by using my local banner, they just ask me, you know what it means? They just ask you, have they erected your own monument? That's a joke. You know, but let us not lose sight of the ball. Going to
those states,
yes, the senator, that's what it's called, that was erected by former governor at that place. When they had that massacre, that church massacre, that some guys went into that church, some criminal went into that church and massacred. Even till now, I don't know how that case ended. maybe we need to remind ourselves, I don't like ending. Now, the government erected it in memory, and I totally agree with that, because those are monuments that you look at and you say, oh, we have something to do. I'm just speaking about monuments again. If you go to Ejibo, you know Ejibo, right? Where we had the C-130 air crash, where those majors lost their lives during the IBB days. There was that particular place where that bridge, where it was. There was this thing that was erected. Could be still there. Just beside that place also, you have another one erected for those that lost their life during the bomb blast. Bomb blast, yeah. Bomb blast at the Ikeja cantonment. So those are monumental. Now I'm talking about it. They say it's tradition. The traditional rulers say where the put is now right is covering. Where was it when they were doing it? Why didn't you raise that issue? So I don't think it was. I don't want to believe that it's politically motivated. But from the news we had, they said with the story we are hearing that the governor has agreed to be able to erect another one somewhere away from probably the palace where the paramount ruler of the...
Well, maybe the Ondo people also felt like the Imo people felt. Now you from Imo, you are seeing that it was a good thing, and maybe some other people were seeing the Imo one as a good thing as well.
No,
but that's something.
Let me say this quickly so that I can go to another story. If they erect any monument today to be able to honor the lives of so many people from Imo State that have been killed or have died due to insecurity, I personally will support that. Do you understand what I mean? I will support that. But when you continue picking up, is anybody there you want that come to the state, the man will read, anyone, you need to go see the what. I say you need to come to him and see it was a complete shit. Forget that man, I think.
Anyway.
All right, let's look at another story, and this is on the Punch. It says, Tinubu's Electricity Act, 7 states take charge of power regulation. And the writer here says, fears as experts, consumer groups foresee glitches, or your Enugu others take control. And of course, some people are saying this is a good thing, others are saying no, it's not really, because what's going to happen with all of these states that now assume this the power to regulate, and they're talking about capacity gaps, they're talking about regulatory clarity, they're talking about decentralization and whatnot, and subsidy management. What's your take on this? I mean, it should be a good thing that the states are able to regulate their own electricity. So now what they can do is generate, transmit, and of course distribute. But do you think they have the capacity to do that?
It's a good one. I'm on the school of thought that the current condition where we just centralize the generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity is not good for Nigeria. The situation where we generate and transmit just a little below 5,000 megawatts to a country population of over 200 million does not make any sense. This is just what some states in other countries, just some states, even local government generate and distribute. So the earlier we take up the burden from the national, the national to sub-regional, the better for us. Lagos have been generating electricity, especially within the Ikeja axis for some time. I think from the time Babatunde Fashola, and distribution that they also been distributed to certain companies and organizations at the state apparatus or state agencies in Lagos. But that is not where the problem is. Yes, you can say states can generate, even individuals are generating. If you remember what is happening in Aba with that private sector initiative in Aba, we are generating about 30 or 25 megawatts. The problem is our distribution channel. Let me tell you for free, and most of our listeners are those watching them. The problem is even those states generate, they still have to now put it on the national grid. That is what is happening. There is no any transmission lines that are taking that independently. The states are doing so. Like what is happening in Enugu State? Enugu State was the first state to be given the license to do that. And they generate, and you still put on national, and there's a limit to what the national grid, the national grid, as is currently constructed, cannot take more than 5,000 megawatts of power. That is why when they push When you push beyond that, it collapses. We are generating, at times you see that we're generating about 7,000 megawatts. But you cannot push that 7,000 megawatts into the national grid because it will not take it, it will collapse. So what we need to do, the focus should be moving up and scaling up the infrastructure in our transmission lines. Nothing has been done about that in over 40-50 years. And that is where the problem is. So it's not just generating, but transmitting. So until we're able to do that and scale down and be able to improve the capacity for this transmission line to be able to take more, then we'll continue whatever you give the states to do or whatever you need to do, it will just be a waste of time and resources as far as I'm concerned. That what we need to do is change most of those archaic transmission lines, equipment, and everything so that we'll be able to transmit more. But if not, if it's still on this same analog quote unquote I'm using, we are still there, forget it. If you like license 1 million states, at the end of it all is to take products. So what we're also saying, what I'm also saying is that if we are going to allow the state to generate, we also have, are they going to have their own separate transition line that is independent of the national grid, because that is what is happening now.
Well, my concern in this electricity generation and distribution and all that is that it doesn't seem to be a kind of service that can have competition. If the state takes it over, it means that state does it in that state, and whatever they want to do up with their tariffs and all that, there may not be competition. I don't know, I'm not an expert in that. It's not like the telecoms that you can have so many masts, for instance, in one village, and if you cannot use this one, you use the other one. So what options will we have? Will we need to have a regulator that will make sure that the people are not shortchanged? Are we going to just leave it for every state to dictate what they're doing? And like Rume said, the capacity to do what they're supposed to do when some of these states have not even paid minimum wage, the last minimum wage and all that. So I'm concerned about all this.
We have a regulatory body in charge, you know that. We have a regulatory body in charge. We have already. It's not that we don't have.
Is it working effectively?
The question, yes. The question we should be asking is, what have they been doing? In the telecom sector, we have the NCs. And you see what they are doing. You understand what I mean? So that is it. So we also have to look at the regulatory agencies and ask what are they doing. It's just that, you know, the problem with us in Nigeria is that it's not having policy, it's not a law. We have enough law to go around to do whatever we want to do. As a graduate of law, I know that we have several laws, including the 1999 Constitution as amended, whatever we need to do. But the question we always ask ourselves, what are the implications? What are the implementation level? You just say that the companies, the electricity companies just look up on a daily basis and just change their tariff, and nobody's talking. They just change their tariff, nobody's talking. They bill you, they put you on an estimated bill for what you don't consume. Now the question you ask yourself, you know, when we have issues with telecom, the tariff for this thing is too high, my cost tariff, you report to the NCC, and there have been instances where NCC have been engaging some of these telecom companies. In fact, there have been instances where they have sanctioned them. I know that a particular telecom company at one time was over 1 trillion naira fine was imposed on them. I hope you still remember that one very, very well. So that is what happened. And so it is the regulatory body. If they don't have the political will to do the list, then we can find ourselves. But I repeat, it is not just licensing states or individuals or private sectors. The fact is that we have to also increase our capacity. We made a very big mistake when we privatized NEPA in those days. We disassembled NEPA solely to police and solely to individuals who did not have the financial capacity to be able to do the job and get it over. Do you know that the point we were even subsidizing, despite that the part we were privatizing, the federal government was even giving money to some most of this. All you are just interested is just grabbing the license and they run with it and making money without giving Nigeria the necessary and required services as it were.
It's unfortunate.
All right, let's look at let's look at some political matters. So of course, on the Daily Trust, it leads with why we're seeking a new party for coalition, and that's according to El Rufai. So, I mean, a lot of talks have been about the 2027 election that is to come, even though it is 2 years from now, but we keep talking about it. But what's your take on this, the coalition? We've seen what has happened with the PDP. They don't really have their house in order. The Labour Party, they're different factions, and everybody is just coming up with their own personal ambition. But what's your take on the fact that El Rufai now is saying why they need a coalition and why it is imminent?
Yeah, talking about the new Ada.
He called it Ada too. That's what I was calling it. We were laughing. He called it Ada.
You're talking about yes, you're talking about Ada. Anyway, first and foremost, I know a few days ago, was it yesterday, there I said that they don't have any letter for registration from any of these political parties or coalition groups. Now what they have is a letter of intent. They try to differentiate between letter of intent and letter of registration. So as far as they're concerned, what they have is a letter of intent, but not a letter of registration. Even the letter of intent, with some level of gimmicks, has the wrong name of the commission, even though INEC connected it and stamped the letter. So, but that is why. El Rufai, one of the arrowheads of the new rule, because you can't call them political party now, they're not registered. Came out yesterday and said that that an opinion poll, I don't know who conducted that, whether it's him or some of his friends, has shown that President Tinubu's popularity rate, or what is the word used, has been is just about 96%. That in some regions is about 76, in some places about that. Even Lagos, where he comes from and where he's supposed to go, but that his popularity rates have reduced to less than 50%. So in essence, what I'm saying is that by 2027, that President Bola Tinubu is their gunner. Well, in politics, anybody can say anything. And so I personally, and I was saying in one of my platforms, social media platforms yesterday, what Nigeria needs now is a two-party state. We saw what happened during that's my personal opinion. We saw what happened during the SDP NRC days, and we saw the outcome. You need two strong parties. One will lead, the other will be strong opposition. You understand? And in terms of cost, it also reduces cost. So what Nigeria needs for me is a two-party. People say, "Oh, that is our constitution." Of course, our constitution will give you for multi-party. But apart from one or two, or apart from PDP, APC, well, a little bit of maybe Labour, and which of them have which of them, but they are over 100. Which of them do sequentially? Which of them have elected offices? What they just do is that once it gets to election period, they go to INEC and collect that subsidy they give. I don't know whether they still give them, and they disappear. I personally believe that we need two strong political parties. In the United Kingdom, there are two strong political parties.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to ask that. Yeah.
You go to the US, two strong political parties. You can have
and a chance for independent candidacy.
Yeah. You cannot have independent candidates. So that we'll be able to focus and make sure that when there's an election, we are going to make sure that each of the two parties will give in their best, and Nigerians have a choice. It's happened in the NRC. That was not why we have to today. We still say that 1993 election was the freest and the best in the history of it. And think of it, what was used? Option A for you. I don't remember what the option A for was.
Yeah.
Whether people have to just although it's the numbers might not be possible to do it now because you need to see the level of apathy during the election. At every election in the past 15 years, close to 20 years, we will not have any turnout of up to 35%. Something is wrong. That means that what we're happening is that we're having the minority having their say and electing people that the majority did not even vote for. So that's my own personal opinion about this.
All right. I mean, you just cited the UK where they have the Tories, that's the Conservatives, the Labour Party. And I know that sometimes, you know, it just depends on what it is. They can even have something with the Liberal and just come together. So I think at this point we need to start to look at what works for us. It's not just saying we need to follow this, our constitution. Our constitution obviously can be revised as well. And if we look at the intricacies of things and say, you know what, maybe this is what we should do and this would benefit us better, then why not? Anyways, this is how much we can take on this segment right now. We want to say thank you so much for coming, Chris. It's always a pleasure having you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for the added comment. Have a wonderful day.
Go have yourself a monument,
You too,
a statue in your name.
All right, we're speaking with Chris KEHINDE NWANDU, is the editor CKN News, and we've just been looking at the stories that popped on the front pages of our national dailies. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing the fact that petrol may rise to 1,000 naira as global oil prices surge. Please stay with us.